Major League Baseball spring training is right around the corner, and we're starting to get a first look at each team's new acquisitions from last winter. From Justin Verlander and Mets threads to Xander Bogaerts and Padres pinstripes, all 30 MLB teams are entering camp with one goal, according to their owners at least, to win the World Series. With so many faces in new places and teams adding and in some cases subtracting from their rosters, it's time to take a look at how I think the 2023 season will pan out. Welcome to NMR Sports, a channel where we talk baseball as much as humanly possible, and these are my 2023 American League Division predictions. Okay, so the first division I want to start off with is the American League East. Now there were some big moves made in the American League East, and this is how I see the division shaping out. In 5th place, I'm going to have the Boston Red Sox. Now, the Red Sox roster just isn't that impressive. They did have a big signing this offseason in Masataka Yoshida. They also added Justin Turner to their roster, a nice veteran bat, but they did lose JD Martinez and Xander Bogaerts. And outside of Rafael Devers, nobody in this lineup is necessarily that scary. While their rotation isn't necessarily the worst in baseball, it's certainly below average in my opinion. And they do have some big names in their bullpen with Kenley Jansen and Chris Martin, but as a whole, I think this roster is pretty weak all around. There's not a single part of this roster that I would consider near the top 10 in baseball. Next up, we've got the Baltimore Orioles finishing 4th in the AL East. Now, the Orioles had a fantastic year in 2022, but unfortunately, I feel like this offseason was kind of a disappointment to them. I still really love pieces of their lineup like Cedric Mullins. Adley Rutschman, I think, is possibly the best catcher in baseball or will take over that crown this season. Gunnar Henderson is pegged as some to be one of the best players in baseball after this season. Anthony Santander is solid, Ryan Mountcastle's underrated, and of course they have one of the fastest players in baseball in Jorge Mateo as well. When it comes down to it, I'm just a little disappointed they didn't address the biggest weak spot on their roster, and that was the starting rotation. They did trade for Cole Irvin, which was nice. I think he's a solid pitcher, but as a whole, this rotation is bad on opening day. Sure, Grayson Rodriguez can come up and be the savior and, turn into a young Steven Strasburg or something, but he's had injury concerns in the past, and I don't necessarily think that a rotation full of nobodies and then a one top prospect is going to take this team anywhere further than 4th place in a stacked division like the East. Their bullpen, I will say, is going to continue to be stacked. It was one of the most underrated bullpens in baseball last year, and I think they continue that into this season. So overall, I like the Orioles. I just don't see them finishing higher than 4th in this division. Next up in 3rd place, we're going to have the Tampa Bay Rays. Now, the Rays are an interesting team. I feel like they go into each season as a criminally underrated ball club, and overall, this roster or this lineup is better than a lot of people give it credit for. You have Yandy Diaz, who was fantastic last season. Wander Franco is considered by many to be a top 50, probably top 20 player in the MLB, despite the small sample size because of his sheer talent. Randy Arozarena is solid, we know. Brandon Lau hits for great power. Harold Ramirez was solid last year. Manuel Margot looked fantastic last year. Isaac Paredes had a great year. This roster is severely underrated in my opinion. And then this rotation, I don't know, I might have to do a rotation rankings or something, but this might be a top 5 rotation in baseball, top 3 rotation in baseball. This rotation is nasty. We have Shane McClanahan, who could have easily won the Cy Young last year. Tyler Glasnow, who I would put in heavy contention for a Cy Young this season. Drew Rasmussen came on great last year. Jeffrey Springs was fantastic last year. I don't love the Eflin signing for the Rays, but we know the Rays are great at developing pitching, so I could imagine Zach Eflin turning into a Cy Young candidate because he plays in Tampa Bay for one season. So as far as the rotation goes, absolute 10 out of 10. And then their bullpen, I don't even need to look at their bullpen because I know the Rays are going to get maximum value out of their bullpen, regardless of if I like it or not. They could take the 2022 Angels bullpen and turn it into a top 5 bullpen in all of baseball. That's how good the Rays coaching staff is. And that's why I think the Rays are so underrated. And honestly, I'm underrating them, putting them at 3rd. I might even have to switch this up after I record. Next up, we have the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, the Blue Jays are interesting because the Blue Jays feel overrated to me, but then I look at the roster and it's pretty damn good. I'm not going to lie. George Springer's still fantastic. If he can play 100 games in a season, that would be nice. Bo Bichette's fantastic. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Alejandro Kirk absolutely exploded onto the scene last year. I love the trade for Dalton Varsho, finally getting some left-handed hitters in these lineups. Brandon Belt was a good signing and will help with defense. Kevin Kiermaier, same thing. And then Whit Merrifield and Matt Chapman to round it out. It's a really good team, as well as some good depth on here. Santiago Espinal was an all-star last season. Danny Jansen was tearing the cover off the ball for most of last year. And then as far as the rotation's concerned, I really like the addition of Chris Bassett. I think Chris Bassett is a phenomenal, above-average innings eater type starting pitcher, and he's a really good complement to Alek Manoah and Kevin Gausman. If they can get any sort of production out of a combination of Ryu, Jose Barrios, and Yusei Kikuchi, which I realize is asking a lot, they could have a pretty solid rotation. I really like the top three now, though. And then this bullpen is really good now. Jordan Romano's always been good. Eric Swanson, that trade, I think as much as it's going to hurt to not have Teoscar Hernandez in the lineup for the Blue Jays, Eric Swanson's going to make a huge difference on the back end for this Blue Jays roster that definitely had big struggles in the bullpen last year. So overall, I think the Blue Jays are a really complete roster, definitely a top 10, maybe close to top 5 team in the MLB going into this season. And even though, like I said, I kind of feel like they're overrated, after I look at their roster, they're really not. They're a real complete team, which is why I have them at second place in the AL East. And then, of course, at first place in the AL East, who else could it be? It's the New York Yankees. You have a top 3 player in baseball in Aaron Judge. You're going to get, hopefully, a full healthy season of Harrison Bader this year. They've still got some good pop in the lineup between Stanton, Donaldson, and Rizzo. Jose Trevino was an all-star catcher and a top 5 catcher in the AL last year. And then you have Oswald Peraza and Oswaldo Cabrera, I think I got that right, to give you some good depth on the bench. And how could you not be in love with this rotation? Garrett Cole and Carlos Rodon, maybe the scariest 1-2 punch, probably the scariest 1-2 punch in all of baseball, with Scherzer and Verlander being so close there. Luis Severino's fantastic. Nestor Cortez was amazing last year, and they've got a good combination of arms in the minor leagues as well as Domingo Germán. And then they have a great bullpen to go along with it. The Yankees are a very complete team. As long as Aaron Judge stays healthy, the Yankees are absolutely taking home the AL East this year. Next up, we're going to move over to the AL Central and talk about the 5th place team, the Detroit Tigers. My parents always taught me, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. So next up, we got the Kansas City Royals. Now, the Royals lineup is very good. I genuinely enjoy this lineup. MJ Melendez can tear the cover off the ball. We all know what Bobby Witt Jr. is capable of, and I think he's going to have a monster year in 2023. Salvador Perez, Vinny Pasquantino. Half of this lineup is genuinely good and a potentially playoff caliber lineup. The other half, not so much, and that's kind of what keeps them out of the top half of a weak division in the AL Central. There's really just no depth outside of this. Kyle Isbell, Hunter Dozier, Michael Massey, and Nate Eaton. The rotation is just not good, with Zach Greinke and Jordan Lyles headlining with Brady Singer. But I will say I do like their bullpen. I think their bullpen is okay. Like, if you put this bullpen on a team with a good lineup, there's a chance they could get something done. But with the way the current roster is constructed, the Royals' ceiling feels like 3rd place, but I gotta put them at 4th. Next up, we got the Chicago White Sox. Now, the White Sox are an interesting team because they have a great lineup 1 through 9 for the most part, but they really have to stay healthy, and they haven't been able to do that. Luis Robert has gone on the injured list multiple times recently. Eloy Jimenez has been on and off the IL. Tim Anderson went down last season. It feels like everybody in this lineup has had injury concerns, and with the depth or lack thereof that they have behind it, I really have concerns for the White Sox going into this season. Couple that in with a solid rotation, but not necessarily elite. And with Liam Hendricks out having a battle with cancer, this bullpen does not look that great to me. So the White Sox could be good again. They could win 81 games like they always do, but I don't see them being a 90-win team in 23. Next up, we got the Minnesota Twins. Now, I feel like the Twins do fit in a similar box as the White Sox. How many games are you going to get out of Byron Buxton and Carlos Correa combined? Jorge Polanco and Max Kepler have dealt with injuries recently too. Which version of Joey Gallo are you going to get? And they have 2 question marks in my opinion in Royce Lewis and Jose Miranda. So this lineup could be dangerous. It's just going to depend on if you can get big performances out of those 2 guys, as well as healthy seasons from Byron Buxton and Carlos Correa. Now, I really like the Twins rotation now with Pablo Lopez, Sonny Gray, Tyler Mahle. Bailey Ober was really good last year. Joe Ryan was solid when he was healthy. And it's a huge improvement, even though it's not in a top 5 rotation in baseball. It's a big improvement over the last couple of seasons. Another key factor is going to be their bullpen. They're going to need big performances from Jorge Lopez, who they traded for last year, as well as Joan Duran. So overall, I think the Twins will be solid, but I don't think they're going to quite measure up to first place in the Central. And my first place team in the the AL Central is, of course, the Cleveland Guardians. Now, if this team played in the AL East, they'd probably be a 4th place team, but in the AL Central, this roster is absolutely enough to get it done, especially with the young talent they have all throughout this roster. Steven Kwan was fantastic, borderline Rookie of the Year last year. Ahmed Rosario played well above average. Jose Ramirez is a superstar. Josh Bell was a great underrated free agent signing this offseason. Andres Jimenez was an all-star. Josh Naylor was hitting nukes left and right last year. Oscar Gonzalez is a top prospect. Mike Zunino was a great signing for them. I really like this roster as far as the lineup's constructed. And then their pitching is just out of this world. Shane Bieber, Tristan McKenzie, Cal Quantrill. That is a great 1-2-3 punch. Throw in Aaron Savale as well as Zach Plesac there to eat some innings. I think this is a phenomenal rotation. And the bullpen is just absolutely out of this world. Emmanuel Clase, one of the best closers in baseball. He's probably my number 2 to Edwin Diaz. And you know the Guardians, they're just good at finding guys to compete. So I'd look for the Guardians to take a huge step forward this season and absolutely run away with the AL Central. And now we move on to the final division in the American League, the AL West, starting off with, of course, the Oakland Athletics. This is another team that I just don't have a lot of nice things to say about. I guess Shea Langoliers is going to be fun to watch. Hopefully he can blossom into one of the best catchers in baseball. He was a former top prospect. But outside of that, the rotation's not great. The bullpen's not great. The lineup's not great. There's no depth. It's just going to be a train wreck in Oakland this season. Moving on to 4th place, I've seen this be kind of a hot take around Twitter, but the Texas Rangers. The amount of people who think the Rangers had a better record than the Angels last season astonishes me on Twitter. But overall, I like what the Rangers did this offseason. The lineup is good. Marcus Semien, Corey Seager, Nathaniel Lau, that's a great 1-2-3. Adolis Garcia is a nice role player there, as well as Jonah Heim. They have a great catching situation between Jonah Heim and Mitch Garver. Not even to mention the potential of Josh Young. He could be phenomenal this season, we don't know. But Brad Miller, Robbie Grossman, and Leody Taveras being in your starting lineup on opening day is not a pretty sight if you're a Rangers fan. Now, they do have the best pitcher in baseball in Jacob deGrom. Martin Perez was phenomenal last season, but if we look at his career numbers, they're not great, so I don't have a lot of faith in him repeating that performance. John Gray, I think, is a very average pitcher. Same thing with Nathan Eovaldi, maybe a little above average. I do like Eovaldi more than I like John Gray. And then Andrew Heaney's had a terrible career outside of last season in LA, and I don't have a lot of faith in the Rangers coaching staff to turn Andrew Heaney into what he was last season. As far as the bullpen's concerned, I do like some of these guys. I like Jose Leclerc a lot if he can finally stay healthy. I like Brock Burke. Taylor Hearn's shown some stuff every once in a while, and then Danny Duffy, he's been injured for the last 2 years, it feels like, but the last time we saw him, he had a great season. I believe it was back in 2019 or 2021. It's been a long time, but Danny Duffy might still have it. Now, I do think the Texas Rangers could win more than 81 games, finish the season above 500, but I see their ceiling in more of the 85, 86 win range, not the 90 plus win range, as I've seen some people talk about. And in 3rd place, we got my favorite team to talk about, obviously. That is my Los Angeles Angels. The Angels lineup, I've been pretty shy about talking about how good I think the Angels could be this year. This lineup is very good on paper. This lineup is so good on paper. We have Taylor Ward, who looked great last year, the greatest player of our generation, batting 2nd, the unicorn and a phenomenal power hitter in Ohtani. Anthony Rendon, if he can stay healthy, still a great ball player. Hunter Renfroe, 30-plus home run pop. Brandon Drury had a great season last year. Jared Walsh can hit 30 home runs if he's healthy. Logan O'Hoppe is the real wild card of this lineup. I think he could have a very good year next year, and if he can just be an average to slightly above average offensive catcher, this lineup's going to be scary. Luis Rengifo was also solid last year. David Fletcher's probably going to excel with the shift being banned. Not to mention we have Gio Urshela for depth, as well as Brett Phillips, who has actually been a very solid bat against right-handed pitching exclusively, so off the bench, if we need him against a righty, he could be pretty solid. He also plays great defense. The lineup is absolutely sick, in my opinion. And then we come over here to the pitching staff. The starting rotation, in my opinion, while it's not elite, it is far above average. I'd probably put him around top 10 in all of baseball. Shohei Ohtani, obviously, Cy Young candidate. Tyler Anderson, Patrick Sandoval, and Reed Detmers are really good options to back up Shohei Ohtani. It feels like we have a real chance to win when any 4 of those guys are on the mound. Jose Suarez has shown flashes of brilliance in the past, but I don't really have faith in him putting it together for a full season, but having him as a number 5 or number 6 is fantastic. fantastic in my opinion. And then Tucker Davidson, believe it or not, had a couple of good starts with the Halos last year, so we'll see how that goes. But last year, what really killed the Angels was their bullpen. I really like the signing of Carlos Estevez. I think he's going to be fantastic for us this year. Jimmy Herget was great down the stretch for the Angels last year. Ryan Tepera, Matt Moore, and Aaron Loop. I have no idea what we're getting out of these guys. These guys are complete wild cards. I could see any one of them getting released this year, as well as either one of them having a sub-2 ERA this season. They're all in their mid-30s. They've all had great seasons in the past in relief, but Tepera and Loop were terrible for the Angels last year, and Matt Moore has had some very bad seasons before he had a dominant one last year with the Rangers. And then outside of that, the only one of these guys I necessarily like is Jose Quijada, but we do have some really solid bullpen options in the minor leagues. Ben Joyce has been throwing 105 miles per hour in his bullpen sessions. Eric Torres and Luke Murphy are in the camp that I'm hoping to make the roster. So there's some good young guys in the farm system that I hope make the Angels roster, and that bullpen could be legit. And this roster could be great. This is the most optimism I've had for an Angels team in the last couple of seasons, but they're still the Angels, and you know they'll find a way to ruin my expectations. Moving on to the next team, we've got the Seattle Mariners. Now, this is easily my pick for the most underrated team in all of baseball. They're not better than the Astros yet, but they are severely underrated this season. Julio Rodriguez is one of the best young talents in the sport. He's better than Ronald Acuna Jr. I don't know if that's a hot take yet. He is absolutely elite. I think he's going to have a 30-30 season this year. He's just absolutely electric to watch. Ty France is very good. Eugenio Suarez has hits for great power. Teoscar Hernandez is a huge addition to the middle of that lineup. Colton Wong's going to play Gold Glove caliber defense while putting a solid bat in the lineup. Cal Raleigh is a fantastic catcher. J.P. Crawford can swing the bat a little bit. A.J. Pollock's great against lefties. And I really like the signing of Tommy La Stella for some depth as well. I will say they're not the deepest team in baseball, but Sam Haggerty had some good at-bats last season, as well as Dylan Moore. And if they could get an ounce of production from Jared Kelenic, that lineup could be lethal. And then moving over to the rotation, Luis Castillo, in my opinion, should be a top 3 favorite for the Cy Young this season. While I don't have a lot of faith in Logan Gilbert, he was really good last season, so we'll see what he does this year. I love George Kirby going into this season. Everything about him screams that he will be a dominant pitcher for the next couple of seasons. Robbie Ray's still a great strikeout pitcher. He was just finding too many barrels last season. And then they still have some prospects waiting in the minor leagues to come up, but Marco Gonzalez was pretty good last season despite every single thing in underlying metrics saying he should have been a bad pitcher. And then they have one of, if not, I'd say a top 3 bullpen in baseball. Their bullpen's so good it makes me sick. I hate the Mariners so much. I think everybody knows this, that I hate the Mariners, but God, this bullpen is sick. They traded away Eric Swanson and it is still disgusting. Paul Sewald, Andres Munoz, Diego Castillo, Matt Brash, Penn Murphy. This bullpen is so damn good. I hate the Mariners, but they are a very good baseball team. Absolute lock for the postseason. And then, of course, we do have to end the video with the best team in the American League, and it is not close. The reigning World Series champions, the Houston Astros. The Astros lineup got better this offseason with the addition of Jose Abreu, and that lineup is just sick now. They have elite veteran talent at every position. Jose Altuve, Michael Brantley, Alex Bregman, Yordan Alvarez, Jose Abreu, Kyle Tucker, Jeremy Pena, and then not to mention they have one of the best pitching staffs in all of baseball. Framber Valdez is my pick to win the Cy Young this season. Spoiler alert for my season predictions. Christian Javier has been heavily favored to win a Cy Young this season. Lance McCullers Jr., people just seem to forget about because he's always injured, but he's been dominant when he's healthy. Luis Garcia is going to have to fix his delivery, so we'll see what happens there, but he and Jose Urquidy are still pretty good options at the bottom of the rotation. And then their bullpen is sick. Rafael Montero and Hector Neris were elite last year. Ryan Stanek was pretty solid. Brian Abreu was good. And then, of course, Ryan Presley's been a great closer for the last couple of years for them. So I absolutely love the Houston Astros. There's no reason not to. I think they should be heavily favored to make it out of the American League. I don't think any team's coming particularly close. If I had to give it to someone, I'd give it to the Yankees, but I think the Yankees need more offense to overthrow the Astros. So that is going to do it for me in this one. Let me know what you guys think of my division previews. If you disagree with where I had a team, or if you totally agree, let me know down in the comments. Let's talk some baseball. Be on the lookout for my National League division previews coming out soon. I appreciate each and every one of you watching. Don't forget to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed, and subscribe for more daily MLB content. I'll see you guys in the next one. I hope you have a great rest of your day.